Hello, welcome to Unlocking Buddhism.
Imagine driving a car that can only move forward. No brakes, no ability to stop. It might feel thrilling for a few seconds, the speed, the momentum, but soon the excitement turns into danger. Without the ability to slow down, every curve is a threat, every intersection, a gamble. Eventually, that road doesn't lead to freedom, it leads to a crash. Our speech works in much the same way. We live in a world where talking is constant, social media updates, endless conversations, the urge to comment on every little thing. We're taught that being quick with our words is a sign of intelligence, that filling the silence is a way to connect, to be liked, to be relevant. But what if the real skill isn't just in knowing what to say, but knowing when not to say it? The Buddha's teaching on right speech is not simply about avoiding lies or harsh words. It's about cultivating wisdom in communication, and that wisdom begins in silence. Just like a car needs both acceleration and brakes to travel safely, our speech needs the counterbalance of stillness. Without the capacity to pause, our words can become reckless, driven by vanity, anxiety, or the desire to control how others see us. Silence is not an absence, it's a space. A space where we can see our motivations clearly before we let them spill into the world. A space where the ego loosens its grip, where we no longer feel the need to decorate our image with every conversation. And it's from this space that truly skillful speech emerges. Words that are clear, compassionate, and necessary. So here's a question worth sitting with. If your words are the road, and your silence is the brake, are you driving with both? Or are you headed toward a crash? Share the word brakes in the comments if you feel ready to explore the power of stillness in your own voice. At the time, I thought he was being overly cautious. I wanted to move, to feel the car respond, to enjoy the rush of going somewhere. But he insisted, without the ability to stop smoothly or return to neutral, movement would quickly become chaos. That lesson stayed with me, though at first I didn't see how it could have anything to do with the way I spoke. Over time, I realized that in conversation, I was doing the same thing many people do, always accelerating. When someone said something, I rushed to respond. When there was a silence, I hurried to fill it. And just like a reckless driver, I ended up taking turns too fast, crashing into misunderstandings, and leaving a trail of unnecessary words behind me. In the Buddha's teaching on right speech, wisdom doesn't begin with knowing what to say. It begins with the ability to pause, to be at ease in that neutral position, before deciding whether to engage. The neutral gear in speech is silence. It's the point where you can observe what's happening in the mind. Am I speaking to help, or am I speaking to be seen? Am I trying to connect, or just to fill space? Am I being moved by kindness, or by irritation, pride, or fear? The monastery trains this from the ground up. Silence is not only verbal, it is also physical. Monks learn to walk without dragging their feet, to place a cup down without clinking it, to sit and stand without disturbance. They avoid clothing that rustles loudly, or movements that draw attention. This is called physical silence, and it creates a kind of discipline that naturally extends into speech. You start to realize that the less unnecessary disturbance you create in the world, the more peace there is, both outside and within. I once met a senior monk who told me that his journey into silence didn't start with meditation, but with his decision to stop trying to be interesting. As a young novice, he was talkative, eager to be liked. Eventually, he began to notice how much of his speech was driven by a subtle anxiety, the fear that if he wasn't speaking, people would lose interest in him. So he tried something different. He started answering questions with the shortest, honest reply possible. Not rude, not evasive, just enough. At first, some people were puzzled, others grew impatient, but those who valued his presence stayed, and those who were attached to constant chatter drifted away. What remained was a quieter mind and relationships rooted in understanding, not noise. In daily life, silence works like a filter. When you speak less, the people who can respect your space will naturally stand out. Those who can't tolerate your quiet will often remove themselves. Far from being a loss, this can be a relief. a way of pruning your social life so that what remains is healthier and more supportive of your well-being. Silence also sharpens perception. Without the constant momentum of talking, you begin to see more clearly the subtle expressions on someone's face, the tone in their voice, the unspoken emotions in a room. These details are easy to miss when your mind is busy preparing what to say next. In neutral, you're simply observing, present, without pushing the moment forward. There's another benefit: freedom from self-made obligations. The more we speak without care, the more of these threads we weave, and soon we're tangled in an image of ourselves that may not even be true anymore. Silence cuts many of those threads. It allows you to act more freely, unburdened by the need to be consistent with something you said, just to fill space. Driving a car is about balance, knowing when to accelerate, when to brake, and when to coast. Speech is no different. Without the break of silence and the neutral of stillness, words can carry us into places we never meant to go. But with them, we can choose our direction with clarity, moving not just quickly, but wisely. In the Noble Eightfold Path, right speech is often described through what it avoids: lying, harsh speech, divisive talk, and idle chatter. These are important guardrails, but the heart of right speech is not just in avoiding harm, it is in speaking with purpose, clarity, and kindness. What is less often emphasized is that this skill begins not with talking at all, but with the capacity for silence. The Buddha compared skillful speech to an action that is timely, truthful, gentle, and beneficial. These four qualities cannot be summoned instantly in the heat of a reaction. They need a space in which to arise. That space is silence. Without it, our words are more likely to be driven by ego, the urge to defend our image, to win approval, or to push our view onto others. In silence, we can notice these urges before they take control. Silence, in Buddhist practice, is not a punishment or a withdrawal from life. It is a deliberate pause that allows the mind to settle and see clearly. Just as muddy water will naturally clarify if left undisturbed, the mind will reveal wiser responses when given stillness. The monk who can walk quietly, handle objects gently, and speak sparingly is not suppressing himself. He is conserving his energy so that when he does act or speak, it comes from a grounded place. There is also humility in silence. Much of unskillful speech comes from the desire to control how others see us. We talk to appear knowledgeable, charming, or virtuous. But humility allows us to let go of that control, to accept that others may misunderstand or underestimate us, and to be at peace with that. As the talk in the transcript explains, some people even turn humility itself into a form of pride, wearing austerity like a badge. True humility is quieter. It doesn't announce itself. It blends in, drawing no unnecessary attention. In practice, training in silence is like returning to neutral in a car. From neutral, you can choose the right gear for the situation. But if you never return to neutral, you may end up forcing the wrong gear at the wrong time, damaging the mechanism. In speech, this damage comes in the form of hurt feelings, broken trust, or commitments you can't keep. This is why monastics are often trained first to be comfortable saying nothing. They learn to sit through conversations without feeling the itch to add their opinion, to be with people without performing for their approval. Only after this foundation is set do they consciously practice speaking again, testing the effect of their words, observing whether their speech brings benefit or harm, and refining their use of language. An important insight here is that silence itself can be an act of compassion. If your words would only add confusion, tension, or ego into a situation, holding them back is a form of care for yourself and for others. At the same time, right speech is not about permanent silence. There are moments when saying something is the most compassionate choice, offering encouragement to someone in pain, diffusing hostility with humor, or clarifying a misunderstanding before it causes harm. The skill, then, lies in discernment, knowing when silence will protect and when speech will serve. This discernment grows through repeated cycles of observation. Remain silent, speak when necessary, reflect on the outcome, and adjust accordingly. Over time, the ego's grip on speech loosens, and words become tools for connection rather than weapons for self. From a Buddhist perspective, this balance between silence and speech supports not only our relationships, but also our meditation practice. The less verbal noise we create, the less mental noise we carry into stillness. Our meditation deepens because the mind is not busy replaying yesterday's conversations or worrying about tomorrow's replies. Speech that begins in silence and returns to silence leaves no heavy trace behind. In this way, learning to be silent is not the opposite of learning to speak well. It is the foundation of it. Just as a skilled driver trusts both the accelerator and the brake, the practitioner of right speech trusts both words and silence, using each in its proper time, with the right measure, and for the good of all. The practice of cultivating silence before speech can be brought into daily life in very simple, concrete ways. It does not require a monastery, robes, or formal vows, only a willingness to pause. At work, for instance, meetings can easily become arenas for quick reactions. Someone suggests an idea, and half the room responds instantly. By practicing a few seconds of silence before speaking, you create space for deeper thought. You might notice that what you planned to say was just to prove a point or to assert your role, rather than to add real value. In that pause, you can decide, is this contribution necessary, kind, and beneficial? In family life, silence can prevent escalation. Arguments often spiral because each side feels compelled to respond immediately, without hearing the other fully. Choosing silence, not in the sense of shutting down or withdrawing, but as a conscious pause, allows you to listen more completely. That moment of stillness can soften your tone when you do respond, making it more likely that your words will heal rather than wound. In friendships, the discipline of silence helps you resist the pull of gossip. Many conversations begin harmlessly but drift toward speaking about someone who isn't present. Training in silence means you can let those moments pass without adding fuel. You might simply nod, change the subject, or redirect the focus back to something constructive. Even in casual encounters with a cashier, a neighbor, or a stranger on the bus, silence can be a gift. Sometimes people just need presence, not commentary. A warm glance, a patient posture, or a simple thank you can carry more meaning than a stream of words. The talk in the transcript also highlights physical silence, which is often overlooked. In a noisy world, moving quietly can be a form of respect. At home, this might mean closing doors gently, handling dishes without clatter, or walking lightly when others are resting. In public spaces, it could be lowering your voice on the phone or avoiding loud, attention-seeking behavior. These small acts signal consideration for those around you and create a calmer, shared environment. Another point raised in the teaching is avoiding performative humility, the tendency to make even our restraint into a display. This is a subtle trap in daily life. For example, refusing to speak in a group not out of mindfulness but to appear mysterious or more disciplined than others is simply ego in disguise. True humility blends in rather than standing out. This could be the first hour after waking, the first 15 minutes at your desk, or a few minutes before meals. Use this time to simply be present without initiating conversation. If someone speaks to you, answer briefly but kindly. Over time, this strengthens your comfort with silence and makes it easier to choose your words wisely later. There will, of course, be times when speech is necessary to give instructions, share important information, or encourage someone in difficulty. Here, the skill developed through silence pays off. Because you are used to pausing before speaking, your words are more likely to be clear, measured, and purposeful. This not only benefits others, but also protects you from the mental clutter that comes from careless speech. Finally, the talk notes that speaking less can naturally change your social circles. Some people may be unsettled when you don't engage in constant chatter. If they drift away, this can be a natural filter, leaving you with relationships based on mutual respect rather than the need to fill every moment with words. In these ways, the principles of silence and right speech are not abstract monastic ideals, but everyday tools, helping us move through the world with more clarity, humility, and peace. Silence is not a void, nor is it simply the absence of sound. In the practice of the Dharma, silence is presence, a living awareness that holds everything without rushing to label, judge, or intervene. It is the soft space between breaths where the mind has room to see clearly. In this sense, silence is not the opposite of speech, but its foundation. The teaching we heard reminds us that silence, in its most skillful form, is not about shutting the world out or retreating permanently into isolation. Rather, it is a training ground, a deliberate practice where we learn to loosen the grip of impulse, to see the intention behind our words before they leave our lips. This training is subtle. It asks us to resist the urge to fill every pause, to refrain from speaking simply to be noticed, and to meet our own discomfort in those moments of stillness. One of silence's deepest lessons is humility. To remain quiet when the ego demands recognition is to surrender the constant project of self-display. It is to allow people their own perceptions of us, even if those perceptions are incomplete or mistaken. In doing so, we learn that our worth is not held in the shifting opinions of others, but in the steadiness of our own integrity. True humility is not in thinking less of ourselves, but in thinking of ourselves less often, and silence is one of the surest ways to cultivate that. Silence also requires courage. It takes strength to let conversations pass without inserting our own voice, to bear the uncertainty of not being seen or acknowledged in the way we might wish. This is not a passive state. It is an active choice to rest in what is real rather than in what is convenient for the ego. Over time, this choice becomes a quiet confidence, the understanding that you do not have to be the loudest presence in the room to hold value. When practiced sincerely, silence transforms our perception. Without the constant noise of our own speech, we hear more. We notice the slight hesitation before someone speaks, the flicker in their eyes when something matters deeply, the way a room changes when tension enters. These details reveal truths that words might obscure. From such awareness, speech becomes less about reacting and more about responding. The talk also brings forth the idea of physical silence, the art of moving without unnecessary noise, of occupying space with gentleness. This is not about walking on eggshells, it is about being attuned to how our presence affects others. Closing a door softly, placing an object down with care, or walking lightly in a shared space are not trivial acts. They are ways of saying, "I see you." Such mindfulness in movement is a form of kindness rarely spoken of, yet deeply felt. In truth, silence and speech are not opposing forces, but partners in balance. Silence without speech can harden into avoidance. Speech without silence dissolves into restlessness. The middle way is to let silence prepare the ground, and to let speech grow from that soil with purpose. Just as the cycle of day and night sustains life, the alternation of speech and silence sustains harmony in the mind. Silence, when chosen out of awareness rather than fear, becomes an act of readiness. It is the pause before the arrow is released, the gathering of breath before a note is sung. From this readiness, speech takes on a different character. It is cleaner, more intentional, and free from the residue of ego. It does not cling to the need to impress or dominate, but serves the moment. The essential lesson is this: let silence be your teacher. Let it guide you into speech, and let it receive your words when they are done. Live in the rhythm of pausing, speaking, and pausing again. This rhythm lightens the burden of ego, sharpens the mind's clarity, and makes our communication not only more skillful, but more human. In such a space, our words become fewer, but their weight becomes greater because they arise from a mind that has first listened. If there is one truth we can carry from this reflection, it is that the quality of our words depends on the quality of our silence. Without the ability to pause, to let the mind settle before speaking, our language becomes just another ripple in the endless noise of the world. But when we learn to root our speech in quiet awareness, our words can become medicine, gentle, precise, and healing. Silence is not a rejection of life. It is a way of engaging with life more fully. It allows us to hear not only the voices around us, but also the quieter voice within, the one that speaks not from fear or habit, but from wisdom and compassion. In this way, silence becomes the ground where true communication grows. The invitation is simple, yet it may challenge you. Over the coming days, experiment with choosing silence more often, not as a wall to hide behind, but as a space to observe, to listen, and to understand. When you feel the urge to speak, pause for a moment and ask, is what I am about to say kind? Is it true? If the answer is no, allow the silence to remain. Notice what happens when you do this. Notice the shifts in your relationships, the clarity in your thoughts, the lightness in your heart when you are not carrying the weight of unnecessary words. See how silence, far from isolating you, can deepen your connection with others because you are no longer speaking over them, but meeting them where they are. If this resonates with you, take it as an experiment for your own life. You do not need to change everything at once. Begin with one conversation, one moment of restraint, one deep breath before replying. Over time, you may find that silence is not empty at all. It is full of space for understanding, for kindness, and for peace. So, here is the question I leave with you. What would happen if, today, you spoke a little less and listened a little more? Share your thoughts in the comments, but only after a pause. Let your words, like all things worth offering, rise from a place of quiet clarity.